You're listening to the RMPodcast, the official podcast of Red Moon Productions. Here are your hosts, Brandon Davidson, Keith Cheatham, and Sean Sebastian. Enjoy.
To another episode of the Red Moon Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Brandon Davidson, alongside a normal new host, Sean Sebastian, and
Jake Gillespie.
Jake Gillespie? Did I pronounce that correctly?
Sure, I don't know.
Jake Gillespie. Well, I was thinking of that old, wasn't there a UK coach?
Oh, Gillespie.
Gillespie?
Yeah, Gillespie, yeah.
Jake Gillespie, it's his son. We
Yep.
got him here on the show tonight. Thanks, Jake, for joining us. How many? How far is UK going to go in the tournament?
12.
Okay.
I'm just as good a
12.
coach.
Not going at all.
I'm just as good a coach as Gillespie. I know. 12.
Touche. Welcome to another episode of the Red Moon Podcast. Thank you all for joining us out there. As always, like, share, subscribe on all of our social media accounts. Let me pull that up for our fine viewers. Right there at the bottom of your screen. Red Moon Book, Red Moon Tweet, Red Moon Picks, and search for Red Moon Productions
I wanted to,
on YouTube.
And I mean, I don't want to jump too far because I know like we're going to get into the review.
Yeah.
But you shared an article earlier today. I thought this would be kind of a funny icebreaker.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, because it's about Alec Baldwin, who claims the Rush shooting lawsuit is targeting rich people.
Right.
Oh,
yeah.
Which I mentioned. I thought, isn't that what Hollywood wants us to do?
I thought
is
Harvey
to
Weinstein smuggling
Yeah.
in milk duds into
Yeah.
prison was going to be the
but I was thinking, Hollywood is usually like, the rich like needs to do more. It's like, aren't we supposed to target the rich? Like, I thought that was the mindset. But anyways, I just thought I wanted to make this point. I was reading an article. We're reviewing, of course, The Batman tonight.
The Batman.
And there's a certain scene that me and I think you do too, but I know me and Sean do, like the hallway scene in the pitch black with the muzzle flashing.
yeah.
It's just an amazing scene.
It's fantastic.
Okay, so I was reading an article from Matt Reeves about like how they did that practically. He said he originally wanted to do it with CGI, and his special effects coordinator was like, no, we can do this for real. And they had like really like
Hey,
they had
good on him for doing that.
They had real guys that were trained that were of course it wasn't real bullets, but I mean it's still real rifles with real muzzle flash. He said the flashing lighting up the scene was real muzzle flash. So I'm sitting here thinking it's like they had 6 guys shooting rifles at Robert Pattinson and nobody died. But somehow, so I just thought it was fun.
Well,
I'm just saying.
I think it's obvious on the set of Rust somebody effed up.
Yes, but that's my point. Is
mainly Alec Baldwin.
That's my point. Is Hollywood saying like, we need to do CGI guns now or fake guns because we need to be more serious about safety? But the proof is in the pudding that all these movies for years have been made. Here's the Batman, one of the
course.
And I just think it's funny that it's like,
well, and it's funny because
here they are, 6.
He wants to say they're ragging on rich people. Well, maybe that was the problem with your film. Is that's a $200 million budget film mixed with a $13 million on Rust.
Yeah.
So you're actually saying, well, when we don't get paid enough, screw it, we're just going to put real bullets in the gun. That's what I get from Alec Baldwin.
He's one of the producers. Apparently, it's like, obviously what I'm saying is Matt Reeves and the producers on the Batman actually did their job, whereas Alec Baldwin was just like,
Russian roulette.
Yeah.
Let's just play.
See what happens.
Yeah.
Let's see what happens.
I just thought that was funny that apparently you can have real guns on set and still have safety.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
And it looks amazing because that scene in the Batman was terrific.
Oh,
It's
no.
fantastic.
That's in the muzzle flash made that scene
It did.
fantastic.
Yes.
No, it did. And honestly, I'm glad to hear that, again, this is why I think something practical does look better.
Yeah.
Because you can't fake it or it doesn't seem, again, we always have that problem with special effects, that uncanny valley. And the thing is I'm glad they stepped in and told Matt Reeves, hey, no, we can actually do this.
Pull this off.
And I'm sure, of course, the moment you decide to do a scene like that with real guns and real muzzle flashes, every precaution has to be made.
Yeah.
What's that noise?
He's trying to make sure it doesn't
I'm
explode.
trying to make,
Well, no. We haven't introduced.
I don't even know where my can went. I can't put it up there this week.
Well, you already poured yours.
I think I threw the can away already.
That's right. We're taste testing another beer tonight.
Someone else show them what we're tasting.
I got it. Hold on. I can show.
I haven't
got
tried it yet.
A down south
Oh,
lager.
it smells
Pour
amazing.
mine.
Yeah.
Oh, it smells good, man.
Actually, hold on. Don't you haven't tasted?
No,
yours
I haven't
yet.
tasted, but it smells.
I know. I'm hoping mine doesn't.
And I like the color. I mean, it's
no
not.
explosions. No explosions.
It's a little light, but it's not. see-through. Like it's got some cloud to it, so it's not like you're drinking water.
Just trying to get a little bit of the sound there,
Yeah, get that sound.
but I don't. Ooh, it's got a good. It's really light. It's very for a lager.
It is.
Appalachian
It is.
Mountain Brewery.
It's light
It's
in
a
color,
very, very
but it is
light-
cloudy. It's not like it's see-through like you're drinking a Bud Light.
Mine's pretty see-through.
I was gonna say mine's pretty see-through compared to
Yeah.
what we've had.
Brandon
Except
didn't get my glass very clean. There's shit floating around in it.
I did not. That's
Maybe that's just part of the beer.
No, that's
Oh,
the
that's
bubble.
the
Yeah,
beer.
You're
No,
supposed
there
to have.
is literally stuff.
there's
floating
not
around
stuff
in there.
floating.
No, there's
There's amoebas in mine.
There was.
You know what it is? It's
Actually, I do have some. It's the dishwasher.
it's the
soap.
dish, so it's gonna
Yeah.
taste a little soapy,
Yeah, a little soapy.
sudsy.
little sudsy.
All right,
what scent is your dish soap?
I don't even. It's it's
Ooh.
Cascade.
That's good.
It's not the cheap stuff.
It's not my favorite of the ones we've had, but that is good. It's a little light.
It's not bad. It's very light. It's
It
not
is
bad.
light.
I taste a little bit of Dawn.
Honestly,
I'm not sure if
this,
that's what I'm tasting.
I think
or
this
not.
is my least favorite out of all of them.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
See, last week's was my least favorite.
No, I like last week's
That
better.
wasn't
It
the
had more
luau.
flavor.
Well, last week's was I can't remember.
it was a
what
little. It was
last
hoppier.
Yeah, it had
all
the
of
hops
these-
on the back end.
All of these so far for IPAs have not been hoppy though. Like this
No.
one's not very hoppy.
Last week's was by far the hoppiest we've had. This is very light. This would almost I would put on the
This-
surface of the session IPA we had the first week.
But the session tasted better.
Yeah,
I agree.
Like
this
this
is very flat.
Honestly, I'm tasting this and I'm getting like Michelob Ultra.
Yeah.
Like it's good for a mass produced beer, but it's still not what you really want. And I don't know.
I feel like I'm drinking sweat. This is kind of I don't know if I like it.
I'm thinking about pouring it out.
I really don't know. And this is the one I've got like the most of. This is the one we waited, but we have so
I
many
don't
of
think
that
it's
we were.
bad. I'll drink it. It's not my favorite.
How
out of
about
them.
I'm
this?
watching these things float around in my glass, and
It's
I'm like,
bothering Sean.
what is that?
I don't know.
They're like little long fiber looking things.
that. I don't know what that is because there's no fiber in a like a Cascade pouch.
Check
He's-
yours out. See
I
if you have
wonder
little
if
fibers
it's
in it.
I wonder if it's
something
part
in
of the
beer.
paper towel or something.
No, I didn't wash that out with a paper.
Can I see one of the cans? I just kind of want to.
Yeah, here. I'll let you.
Oh,
well.
Well, we got to put them up. Yeah, there you go.
I was just
What is it? Because here's the thing.
Well, it's a lager, so this isn't an IPA. I thought it was an IPA. This
But-
is a lager.
I will say it's very light, and honestly, I would drink this as the second round if
Yeah.
I was tipsy enough.
Yeah, I would drink
I
that.
would drink it as you know. I'm not.
It's not. It definitely wouldn't be my go-to. So Appalachian Mountain
It's
Brewery.
kind of. It's got a very
down
it's-
south lager.
Does yours have that
What?
stuff in there?
Here, hold on.
See, I didn't know if
He's
like
all-
if there's
he
some type of
passed it.
citrus or something, but it's not. So I don't know.
I'll try.
Oh,
There you
oh.
go. Yeah.
I got some in mind too.
Little long thread
don't-
looking things floating around in it.
I
Is that
don't-
just from the glass or is that from the beer?
I honestly don't know because mine's got the same thing.
But see, mine have disappeared. So I kind of
Mine have not.
Oh,
I-
they've all
no,
floated to the
no.
bottom. There they are. They're all
Yeah.
on the bottom.
They're at the bottom. That glass is just dirty.
Okay.
I got them in mine too. Yeah,
As long
they're
as
in
it ain't
mine
gonna
too.
give me cancer, I'm okay.
Yep. I mean, I don't think it's distorting the taste of the beer. I just think it's
Well,
the
beer
beer's
is
just
just-
not that good.
No.
I mean, we may pour this out.
It's
during
like
the
water.
review.
No, I'm gonna drink it. It's not. I've had worse beers. It's not that bad. It's
It-
just not. It's not what I would want.
It's definitely.
I wouldn't-
It's
I wouldn't buy
disappointing
this.
if I was willing. I wanted to go out on a limb and try something.
Yes.
The fact, and then I
that you
picked it, and I
have
was like,
So many more of them, I don't really feel bad discarding that.
yeah, same. We got about 4 more to try. I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
that we're gonna have on next. Well,
It-
not all
yeah.
4 of them on next.
It's
week's
one of those
show,
things
but-
where definitely like this is not something I would like. I wouldn't pay for this or drink it again.
It passed
Well,
the burp test, though.
There you go.
It did.
It has enough of a head on it.
trying to
It's
think.
enough carbonation. What?
I don't know. I'm
Nope.
trying to what to, like really.
He's
I
trying.
think the
Michelob
fact that
Ultra.
we're all pretty
Michelob
indifferent
Ultra is
means it's not a good one.
Michelob Ultra is really what I think of. So
Yeah, I was. Yeah, same.
it's not Bud Light. Like it's not
It's-
that bad of a
yeah.
light beer. But
I would take Mick Ultra over this.
probably.
I would. I don't know why. It's the champagne of beers. I mean, alrighty, guys. On to something a little bit better.
Yeah.
Stella
Let's
Artois.
get to.
I've had one of those,
They're
and it was
okay.
better than this.
Yeah, they're better than this.
We've already introduced it, but yes, let's move on to. Let's talk about movies.
Yes.
Here is our review of the much anticipated, and of course, I know you're getting ready to.
I want one.
You want to
no,
play?
I want one, but like, there's nothing that really fits. We need new ones.
I need a list from you all. Okay, a list from you all and from our listeners.
It's working.
What
We told
should
you.
be on our soundboard?
It's working.
I know that
It's
one's
working.
coming.
It's working.
It's coming. But
Some of them I want to stay.
we also need just different movie phrases.
like, are you not
That's
entertained? is
what I
good.
want.
Like,
Yeah.
are you not entertained?
We're gonna
stay.
need a bigger boat. I think should stay.
The Mad as Hell's kind of.
Yeah.
I like it, but it's
That was too
we've-
long.
Yeah, we're
It's
worn
too
it
long.
out.
We
I
need
think you
shorter
could find
sound
you could find
bites.
something else that represents
The
anger.
Twilight Zone is good, but we rarely use it.
No, yeah.
There's just not a lot
It-
for
It's just when something kooky's going on, which does happen.
you don't really need. You can't handle the truth. I don't think. I mean, we don't really use that either.
I like the Show Me the Money though.
I like Show Me the Money.
That one's that's pretty good. That's pretty
Yeah.
quick too.
You probably
Alright.
get rid of Mad as Hell
Yep.
and
But hey, recommend us. Send us some movie quotes that you would like to
Yes.
hear on the show that would play into our banter back and forth. Send us an email. RMPodcast@redmoonproductions.com. But it's not the end of the show yet.
Nope.
So let's move on
Just
to our
getting
review
started.
of The Batman.
Batman.
I am vengeance. I am the night. I am the Batman.
Yes, Matt Reeves' long-awaited Batman film, simply titled The Batman, has arrived. Originally planned as a part of the Snyderverse, with Ben Affleck attached to star and direct, plans fell through as Affleck backed out of the director's chair and eventually stepped away from the role entirely after Matt Reeves picked up the reins. Now Reeves has created a film reportedly separate from the main DCEU, as DC continues its tried but true strategy of throwing whatever at the wall and going with what sticks. Luckily for Reeves and Warner Brothers and Batman fans alike, The Batman sticks. What this means for the future of DC films is anyone's guess, as 2 HBO Max spin-off series and a theatrical sequel are already in the works. If anything, fans will have a larger Batman universe to play in. But if this is the start of a larger Batman shared universe, one outside of the already established DCEU, Reeves and Warner Brothers are off to a decent start. Starring Robert Pattinson as Bruce Wayne, aka Batman, the film picks up with Batman having already been an active vigilante on the streets of Gotham City for 2 years. Despite his efforts, however, crime continues to rise. Gotham is full of corruption, replete with organized crime and mob bosses the likes of Carmine Falcone, played by John Turturro, and the Penguin, portrayed by Colin Farrell. The movie follows Batman as he investigates a string of murders committed against the Gotham elite, those in positions of power such as the mayor. Committing these crimes and leaving a trail of clues is the Riddler, played by Paul Dano. As Batman works alongside Police Lieutenant James Gordon, played by Jeffrey Wright, to solve the riddles left behind at each crime scene and catch the Riddler, he will unearth secrets about those in charge of protecting Gotham's citizens, and expose deeper corruption unawares to the likes of him and Gordon. Along the way, his path is also crossed by Selina Kyle, aka Catwoman, played by Zoe Kravitz, who has her own score to settle with Carmine Falcone. The Batman leans heavily into the noir and detective aspects of the Caped Crusader, more so than we've seen in film before. Dark and gritty with a bit of Christopher Nolan's grounded realism, the Batman feels like it could lean either way, all into the Dark Knight trilogy's previous realistic take, but also could be right at home in the DCEU or the likes of the Arkham video games or Batman the Animated Series. In fact, Batman the Animated Series is exactly what I feel the film feels closest to. Something that is sure to delight Batman fans the world over, as the animated series is often considered the Batman IP that is closest to the source material. The Batman's noir tone, while gothic and fitting of the character, does have its downsides on occasion, however, as coupled with Batman's brooding nature and the already negative and mostly unfair comparisons of Robert Pattinson to his Twilight films, there are admittedly a few scenes I felt came off as more emo than gothic or noir. Again, these are rare nitpicks, as despite the apprehension and small controversy surrounding Pattinson's casting, I felt he did a fantastic job, and nailed the brutal but calculating nature of Batman. Yes, this Batman is still a bit rougher around the edges and full of anger. He's also younger and has yet to fully realize what his role means to Gotham, something that is well addressed in the plot. In fact, the majority of the cast does well. Wright is spot on as Gordon, and Farrell's a fantastic Penguin. Kravitz embodies the spirit and nature of Catwoman, and even Turturro, whom I was skeptical of as Falcone, does a fine job for what the movie required of the role. Dano stands out in some scenes as perfectly unhinged, yet brilliantly calculating, a perfect modern take on the Riddler. Yet in other scenes, I felt his unhinged yelling came off a bit forced. Almost like Dano was desperate to prove he could perform a villain just as iconic as Heath Ledger's Joker. He does a great job, and again his role served the story perfectly, but I don't see Dano's Riddler as the embodiment of the character the way I felt Ledger embodied the Joker. And ultimately, that's where my biggest gripes of the movie come from. This is the closest I felt a Batman movie has come to being visually pulled from the comics. Kravitz feels like Catwoman, Farrell is the Penguin, but while these actors nailed the tropes of the characters, I do feel like some of their depth is only in servicing the story. Exciting at first, but ultimately you want to know more about why they matter in the long run. Penguin and his rise will be the subject of one of the 2 spin-off series, so we already know more is coming with these characters. I just hope the Batman doesn't fall into Marvel's trap of stringing audiences along by promising the bigger payoffs are always coming in the next project, and then the next project. The Batman seems like a promising start, and I'm interested to see what Reeves' vision of this world and these characters is. Offering both action and visuals while playing on Batman's detective skills, The Batman is a long movie that uses all of its 3-hour runtime. Set pieces are not grandiose, but still, Batman is brutal when he needs to be, and the action is always top-notch. While I can't say I was ever bored or the film doesn't utilize all 3 hours of its runtime, there are still some weaker plot points in the film I felt could have possibly been consolidated for a slightly shorter runtime. Even still, The Batman was for me largely a success. Maybe in need of some slight fine-tuning, but ultimately a good introduction to this version of the character. If nothing else, I felt the movie perfectly established the world. Now hopefully Reeves can build further upon it in his sequels, much as he did with his Planet of the Apes films. I give The Batman 3 out of 4 stars.
3 out of 4 stars.
I liked it a lot.
For the Bat. Well, we just heard your review there.
Wow.
I have a couple nitpicks, but
as we heard
I think
also.
they are nitpicks. Like I really don't. They were enough to bring me down from 3.5, but I mean they were. Again, I just think things that I do think in a good way. Like I love that the movie plops you right in. It's his second year. We don't need to re-see all the because we know that. But I do think there are a few things like his relationship with Alfred that Matt Reeves is just like, well, people already know he has that relationship. So it wasn't as fleshed out in this as say like Batman Begins when you really get like Alfred picking him up and everything and like why do we fall down? Like I felt like some of those relationships in this movie weren't as fleshed out because I feel like Matt Reeves is like, well, people already know he has those close relationships. Let's move into some other territory. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. It was just something that I kind of missed.
For a 3-hour movie, I felt like that was the one thing that was missing from it that gave it the levity I was looking for. Again, I'm in agreement too. 3 out of 4 stars. Enjoyed it. I definitely think it's one of the better Batman films.
Oh, for sure.
No doubt. Don't think it's quite Dark Knight level. I think I told you all off show that, you know, I rewatched Batman Begins recently. I do think it's better than Batman Begins. Kind of in between there. I don't think it's better than Dark Knight Rises. So that's already 2 Nolan films for me that I think are better. And again, I know we potentially are going to see more from Matt Reeves. He's working on a trilogy of Batman films.
When he's involved in this, well, there were going to be 2 spinoff shows. They've already the Gotham City Police Department spinoff, which I think is fine. I don't think there's enough interest there. Yeah. But they are going ahead with the Penguin spinoff, which I do have interest in because Colin Farrell I thought was really like
he was actually one of the standouts in the film that I thought I wanted to see more of. I mean, and again, I don't know if it's weird because I told you all this I think right after the credits rolled in the theater. There's not a pacing issue with the movie. Yeah, no. The pace is pretty much.
I was never bored.
No, I wasn't bored. I was in tune the whole time. It definitely has the grittier noir, feel, more Gothic style approach, and I appreciated that. Thought it was done well. I think agreeing with your review, it slipped into a couple of emo scenes. One in particular, is with Robert Pattinson or Bruce Wayne talking to Falcone, and he's got like his hair and his
Yeah.
It's wet, man.
I was like, and Sean, you even joked, it's like it's never like it's always raining in Gotham in this movie.
Yeah.
So there's, I mean, again, little nitpicks, but ultimately the weird thing is for all the characters that it does have, just like even the Nolan films have a lot of characters, they do a lot more. Maybe that's why I thought it was better than Batman Begins in terms of how much ground this one does cover, or how much it makes me enjoy, I guess, the overarching story and kind of put some of the character stuff aside. Whereas in Batman Begins, you have so much of the time built on, well, you got to build up who Bruce Wayne is, what is his background, how does he get the gadgets and the gizmos.
But I think this movie also had almost a whole, like, not a whole hour, but close, because I mean the Batman Begins is a little over 2 hours. Whereas this is almost 3 hours, so he had even more time in this movie to work with. But I do think he utilized the time well. Like I didn't think there were a part. I do think like maybe some of the side plots could have been consolidated, but I didn't think they necessarily needed to be. So I mean, I did enjoy the whole detective angle.
Agreed.
That's one aspect that's not really ever been showcased in the movies. Yeah, in the comics, the animated series, Sean even mentioned the original Adam West series. But as far as the live action movies, you get a little bit in the Nolan movies when he's doing kind of some of the forensic stuff with the computers, but you don't really see like when he, like in this movie, he looks at the guy's thumb and he's like, oh, he was still alive because of this. Like you don't really see him actually looking at the clues and piecing things together in other movies like he did in this movie. And I loved that because he is supposed to be the world's greatest detective, at least in DC Comics. So that was nice to see that aspect on film.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sean, what did you think? What did you give it?
I actually gave it 3.5.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I did feel like the length of the movie wasn't necessarily a drawback, but there weren't any moments where I was bored, and I can't really, off the top of my head, think of any things that I feel like they could have done less of or left out. But it is just any 3-hour movie in a theater is strenuous.
Except for Return of the King.
Well, yeah. Except for Return of the
I
King.
mean, I literally will
but again,
watch that and I'll be like, oh, there's
that's
no
the
time
crescendo of a amazing trilogy. So it's worth setting through that time. Or Ben-Hur. That's a movie that's worth setting through. But I don't know, the first of 3 Batman movies. Exactly. It was a little long. But that being said, everything in the movie I felt like was well done. One of the things that about this film that I liked better than the Nolan films and all of the Nolan films was because this movie, he's Batman and he's only Bruce Wayne for about 10 minutes in the movie total. In the Nolan films, he's Bruce Wayne and he dresses up as Batman. That this movie focused way more on the Batman and less on the billionaire playboy. And I actually appreciated that. I think that allowed for the whole detective angle to really shine. But the fact that the Nolan films do kind of show a different side or a different version of Batman where you see more of the gizmos and gadgets and you see more of the technology, you see more of his money coming into play in this film, partly because he's only 2 years into being Batman. There's kind of it didn't seem like he had embraced the billionaire playboy aspect of his life. Later on, I can see them kind of, well, now he understands that since he's not just vengeance or a vigilante, he's actually a hope and a hero for the city. And it's not just about putting fear into the bad guys, which I think was encapsulated perfectly in this film.
Agreed.
The opening scene alone just gave me chills.
Yeah.
That was awesome.
But again, now he's kind of, by the end of the film, you see him kind of graduate to more of a helpful caretaker and for the city, not just a fear that the bad guys have. And I like that. So in future films, I feel like he's going to have to embrace his money. He's going to have to embrace his family name, and he's going to have to use that to further the Batman. But in this film, being a first film, I felt like that was great that they focused the majority of the time on him being Batman and kind of playing Bruce Wayne. This was where his heart really was in the suit. His heart wasn't. And I feel like Nolan's films do a completely different spin on it, which is good. I just feel like this movie got some things right about the character that Nolan's film, like maybe he added to the character that we know of.
Things a lot more. Like this is still grounded, but Nolan's was very
grounded.
Yeah.
It made you think, okay, there could be a guy out there that's Batman,
billionaire that
that's using his money to become this thing. In this, the emotion and his background, which you don't get a whole lot of, but we already know, which, like to echo Keith, the fact that they didn't do another origin story was great.
To see his
I didn't need to see it.
Man.
I do agree 100% though that they give you this hospital scene with him and Alfred, and yes, someone who knows everything about Batman and someone who's seen or watched cartoons, read the comics, and has seen all of the different iterations of Batman. We know the father-son relationship that he has with Alfred, and they do expect you to already know that. But for someone going into this film not being that on the up and up with Batman and who he is, I felt like they didn't really give me enough to feel an emotional connection between him and Alfred in that hospital scene. And
agreed.
So there's that. I do think Andy Serkis, though, did a decent job as Alfred.
He had the potential,
but
that was the problem.
Well,
the
but
potential
he's
is
not old enough. I just didn't feel like he was old enough to be the father figure.
I think because
compared to what Robert Pattinson's age is,
I
and how
guess
young
because you are
Batman
going back to a
is.
younger Batman, that does make sense. But
for me, because Alfred, he was in the British military, and he can fight in the comics and in some of the other if
I'm
he
not
has
saying
to.
he couldn't fight.
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
But that's the thing. I liked Andy Serkis because Andy Serkis is someone who does have that physicality. So if they needed to showcase that,
absolutely,
they
you
could.
can't do that with Michael Caine.
Yeah, Michael Caine.
Michael Caine is a fantastic Alfred.
He would look like freaking what's his name in The Irishman?
Oh gosh, no, I know what you're talking about. Freaking
Robert De Niro. Robert De Niro. He's trying to kick somebody. it's like Michael Caine doesn't have the physicality to fight, and I do like because there is a line in this movie where Andy Serkis' Alfred is like, I can teach you how to fight, and I like that because that's an aspect that they haven't shown in the movies before, even though they didn't really show it here. He told it because Alfred does train with Batman because Alfred does have that expertise.
See, that was my issue. Is again there were a lot of show or a lot of tell not show.
Yeah,
and honestly, again for your main characters, again Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman and Robert Pattinson as Batman, and you definitely get to see them perform, and then there's no problems with that at all. Very well done. Minor gripes about some certain lines that are said that are very woke and political, stupid.
Yeah.
You can overlook it. Although I think there are I definitely think there are strands, some subtext there that they're aiming for with the current political day. I'm not going to get into it. All I'm going to say is the reason why it irks me is not just because of a certain political take. I mean, that irks me personally, but it's also because it dates your movie. And I have this problem right now is that I think a string of Hollywood films right now that are releasing and who have all these woke or political commentaries based in just here and now are, again, they're idealists in the sense that they believe that what they're spouting is truth and that somehow it carries a certain weight and gravity that needs to be said in the film. The problem is in 10, 20, 30 years, it's going to make your film look that much older because it's only for a certain time period.
I understand that.
And I think for somebody, again, Batman is a symbol for Gotham.
Yeah.
And I do think that, I will say that from watching Batman Begins after seeing this film, that was what Nolan hit on the head. Nolan was the big picture guy. This version of Batman was, like you said, even the dates, it marks down in like a journal essence of the way the film starts with the monologue and the way it ends.
Yep.
It gives you a set of, a date range that's a very short time period of this one instance of something that happened that was pivotal in this world. That's fine, but it shows you it's taking a much more focused attention on, I guess, certain pivotal things in Batman's and
again,
repertoire.
we don't know where this series is going yet, or if it's leading to something overall or bigger.
True,
but
we don't.
Yeah, this movie was a little bit more focused in, and I think on setting up some of the major characters because it looks to me, with Penguin getting a spinoff and hints of Catwoman's going away, but she might come back, and then of course they tease at the Joker. I feel like Matt Reeves is building a world where it's not just okay, this villain's in this movie, now he's done. This movie has this villain. It's kind of a more connected, okay, the Penguin being, a mafia boss, maybe he's present in all of the movies because he doesn't have to be the main villain. So I think Matt
similar
Reeves
to Kingpin in Marvel.
Yeah, so I think with this, it's kind of like he's setting up this world with these characters, which is fine. But like I said in my review, I'm okay with that. I just don't want it to fall into the Marvel trap of the payoff.
Yes.
The payoff is always coming in the next movie.
Yeah.
Oh, we're building this up, but it's going to pay off in this
Well,
movie.
and not only
oh,
that,
wait, now it's going to pay off in this movie.
Especially what they're doing with this film trilogy. It's separate from the DCEU.
Yes.
And here's the thing. It's only separate in so much as depending on how successful it is.
Yeah.
Because if you do this trend of, or this trilogy of films, and then you also have this trend break out with these episodes in the series, and then they get real popular, then who knows? We may have, you already talked about Flashpoint. Possibly being an instance where they can tie in a multiverse type.
Well, it is a
ideal.
multiverse movie because Ben Affleck and Michael Keaton both are going to be in that movie as because it's supposed to be Ben Affleck's last outing as Batman, and then of course you're going to have Michael Keaton.
And see, the only reason
So
the
it's
payoff
like-
from No Way Home really works is because
you have the build up to it.
Well, not just the
And the
build up,
history.
but you have literally you're going back 20 years to when before the MCU was a thing.
Well,
The-
Michael
what-
Keaton, 89.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
no,
But
true.
that's their draw. They know that people will go see the movie just because of Michael Keaton.
Yeah, but everybody knows that in '89 there was absolutely no chance of there being a universe. But the fact is Peter Parker or Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man was just on the cusp of right before they blew up, to where it was like for them to include it. It was not only a callback to those fans; it was also this is the same generation that got to experience the MCU for
it's
the
kind of
first
like
time.
the MCU kind of exists because of the success of those Spider-Man
Exactly.
movies. Whether Michael Keaton's Batman was successful or not didn't really impact.
And I think we even talked about that after you
the DCU
recorded the
now.
review, that what's kind of interesting about Batman is because of the disjointed nature of the way the studios handled, Tim Burton's Batman series, was the fact that because he didn't return for the third one because they wanted so many ridiculous things, they then turned to Joel Schumacher and I enjoyed Forever for what it was.
Tim Burton and Michael Keaton were signed on for the third, but because of certain licensing, like with McDonald's when Batman Returns came out, a lot of parents threw a fit because they had these Batman toys and these Batman advertising on McDonald's for kids. But then when you watch the movie, the Penguin has this black ooze coming out and people are getting murdered, and they're like, "This isn't a kids movie."
Yep.
So Warner Brothers wanted the third movie to be a little bit more family friendly so they can merchandise it.
Well, that's what you got.
And Tim Burton
Forever wasn't even family friendly. It was just
more so
it
than
was
Tim
comical.
Burton.
It was
more so than Tim Burton's movies.
Yeah.
So Tim Burton bowed. He stayed on as producer, but he bowed out as director. He's like, I'm not directing this because it's not what I want to do. Michael Keaton got to look at the script when they were trying to keep him involved after Burton bowed out, and he's like, no, I'm not doing this either. So then you ended up with Schumacher and Val Kilmer.
And here's the thing, and not to WB's credit, but I do think because of that debacle, we actually got an anthology type series with Batman kind of becoming
like James
a 007.
Bond. Yeah.
And you have this character now who
Then you ended
rotates
up with
throughout.
George freaking Clooney.
Yeah, well,
It was bad.
and again, bad deals in the 90s.
Arnold Schwarzenegger,
We don't
And
even
that,
Uma Thurman.
the whole having a different Batman could have played
Paid
to their.
off.
It could have paid off because you've got to think about it. With Spider-Man, obviously, like Peter Parker's not going to live forever. Eventually, and even Into the Spider-Verse shows that.
Well, again,
but someone else can take up the mantle as
and
Batman.
that's what I loved about Nolan's films. When you watch The Dark Knight Rises, it ends with the idea of what
Robin
he aimed for.
maybe becoming.
But Batman itself is a symbol. It's an idea.
Yeah.
And the whole theme and the thread that's throughout those three movies is, he thinks for himself of, again, Rachel's, hey, I'll be with you the day that, Gotham no longer needs Batman. And he misreads her. And she's like, no, I don't think there's going to come a day when you don't need Batman.
Yeah.
And so he has to realize, like, he's got his own limits. And he comes to learn throughout that trilogy.
Yeah.
Gotham needs something that's immortal.
For me right now, I do really, really like the Batman, but I will say for me right now, Nolan hit the emotional beats better so far because I do like
no
just
doubt.
like that scene with Rachel and like there's never gonna be a day when you don't need like that that hits you
yeah,
right
but
in the
yeah.
Agreed, but it's also weird in the sense that because I think that also is because Nolan's is more rooted. I don't know. I found too, it's more rooted in reality, especially once The Dark Knight hits.
Yeah.
But we also joked around about how Nolan still had these tiebacks to like classical comical lines that were either hokey or a little bit
Well, he had some
cliche.
bad like I'm not wearing hockey pants.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
Nolan wasn't perfect.
It was
no.
a cheap laugh, and it's like, okay, that's
It wasn't
obviously.
even. I didn't even laugh. It
I
was a
didn't.
terrible line. I was like, this is not.
It was a nod for those who probably
Granted,
did
The
chuckle.
Dark Knight was a great movie, but that is a bad line in that movie.
Oh, no doubt.
It's a bad line, but I thought it fit the scene well because you've got him fighting these vigilantes who are exactly that. They're wearing
hockey
pants and football pads and
It's
stuff
just-
like that. And
I
he's
just
basically
wanted a better line. than
I don't
that.
know. I understood what he meant with the line, but yes, it wasn't the best line.
But here's
to
the
pick.
thing: you
And
have a
maybe May came across
performance.
better if Christian Bale wasn't always growling everything.
Yes.
I'm not wearing hockey
Swear
pants.
to me.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, but it's like, but the thing is you have the emotional performance, and the downright just amazing performance from Heath Ledger in that.
Oh yeah,
Movie that outweighs
There's
any
no
of the bad.
comparison between The Dark Knight
And so, and it's funny because I actually do think this movie is a lot more grounded and rooted in reality based on how it plays out. Yeah, it's gothic style, but in terms of from one scene to the next and how things
Noir
happen,
or whatever.
yeah, it's much more. It's just a more, I don't want to say angsty. That's the wrong word. It is a more gothic noir
say
style, but it's not unrealistic.
No.
What happens.
In
fact, it's somewhat to some degree is a little bit too realistic.
I felt like this one could go either way. Like I could see, because I didn't feel like it's as grounded as Nolan yet. Like I could still see if they wanted to say, oh no, we changed our mind, we're going to incorporate like the whole DCEU with this Batman. I could still see them incorporating some of the like Superman and some of the unrealistic elements, and it would kind of work, because when Batman's in his own like city doing his own thing, there's not. I mean, he does have supernatural villains, but we haven't seen any of those yet. I mean, the only villains we've gotten are some of the more realistic ones, like Penguin, who's a mob boss, Catwoman, who's a cat burglar. It's like they didn't have to be outside of that. Now, if he decides to do Mr. Freeze, which Matt Reeves said he was interested in doing a take on that, we'd see how he handles that. Does he make it super realistic, or does he allow for
I think
a
he
little
has
bit
to,
of,
based on the world he's built.
I don't think so, because I don't think
I
it's
think he
that
does.
way yet. I don't think it's super realistic yet, because I don't think we've seen any elements outside.
But
of
I mean,
just,
look at
Well,
every
just the Penguin in general, the way the character design of the Penguin in this film was so much. I mean, Danny DeVito in Batman Returns was a
Comical.
good pick. It's comical, but just his look,
Yeah.
the beak of a nose, how he goes,
Yes.
Yeah.
and all that.
But that
like
was also
the waddle,
more extravagant than what's in the comics.
flipper
Like
fingers and all that.
Yeah,
like,
he doesn't
I'm just
have
like,
flipper. He has
like,
regular
this is a
hands
real
in the
guy.
comics.
They call him the Penguin, and I'm like, they even do that. There's the part where
I
he's
love that.
tied up,
Yes,
and he
and he
waddles for a
waddles.
second,
That
and
was-
I'm
yeah,
like,
that was a
that's
very good-
great
yeah.
because if
Yeah.
you want to throw in the whole waddle thing, there you go. You
Yeah.
did it in a realistic
But
way.
again, take
But-
take the car, take the bat cycle.
I like the car. Yeah.
No, I loved all of
Oh,
it.
yeah.
But it's not the tumbler. The tumbler is something that it's great on film. It was practical in terms of a set piece, but it obviously it kind of takes a step out of reality. The scene
Yeah.
where, I hate to say it, in the beginning of The Dark Knight, when the bus is coming out of the bank and you're like, and then other buses follow behind it. Fantastic opening scene, but a little bit of that's suspension of disbelief.
You would think the bus behind him would be like,
what just
why
happened?
this
He just
bus- yeah.
And then when they start
I
hearing
always
news
had a problem with
reports,
that scene.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and that's what I'm saying. There's moments like that in Nolan's films where he's like, "Hey, it's a comic book film.
Yeah.
Yes, it's based in reality, but we're still going to have
Yeah.
these amazing."
Yeah.
And I love how he grounded it to a degree, but there were still all these moments. I mean,
You still had to have
Catwoman
a little
flips
bit
out
of
of a second story window in the third
Yeah,
film.
yeah.
Not bad. And again, he's always disappearing out of the scene. I love
he did
those.
that in this. Yeah.
He
for
d- yeah,
sure.
he did. But it's like this one, I
That's
definitely
just
think
a normal Batman trait, though.
Yeah.
For all
It
all
is.
mediums.
I'm not
just-
trying to
yeah.
knock it. I'm just saying it's two different paths.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
in this one, it actually felt like they were taking the grittier tone. It just felt grittier than Nolan's films.
I
but
agree
it
with
felt,
that.
But it still felt rooted in the real world.
Oh
just
yeah,
like Nolan's
I mean,
films.
in Nolan's films, Batman relies the majority of his reliance is on technology. I mean, if it wasn't for his money and the R&D that Morgan Freeman is able to do for him, he wouldn't be Batman.
Right.
In this movie, he's Batman just because of his outfit. He doesn't have all of these amazing toys. Although it's one of the lines from Tim Burton's Batman when the Joker says, "Where does he get all of these wonderful toys?" It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, the comic and the old style Batman he had a gadget for everything, and
Right.
it was
His
like
shark repellent,
yeah,
yeah.
the shark repellent bat spray or whatever, and it's just like even in the
Adam
Nolan
West
films,
is
the
great.
tumbler itself it's the perfect vehicle for what he needs, and
Yes.
then when he needs it to turn into a motorcycle, it does.
Exactly.
It's like it's
and it was
just,
an awesome scene.
It is amazing.
And
I'm
the bike
not,
was
I'm not
awesome.
knocking it, but without it, he's not the full-fledged Batman that he could be. And I feel like in Reeves's Batman, you definitely get that. He's reliant on his skill, his size, and his
knowledge.
bulletproof
Yeah.
I
suit.
definitely think the danger in what was at stakes was much more realistic in this one, in the sense that it wasn't just because definitely there's battered and bruising in Christian Bale.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I felt like in this one,
you can tell when he gets stabbed or punched, it hurt. I mean, even when he's without his suit, the scars on his body, which again, Christian Bale has that too, and I appreciate that.
But it definitely made me feel more of a sense of realism when I watched the first Casino Royale and I saw James Bond take hits that you didn't see in the others, and I'm like, oh, this is definitely a much more.
It's grounded.
Okay, this isn't a perfect suave. I'm going to go out and just be flawless.
Yeah, in that movie, she says you need a blunt instrument.
Way better.
Yeah,
and that's exactly what James Bond was.
We haven't even gotten into that.
Good.
This is way
good.
better.
We're going to talk about our other beer we cracked open.
That one's actually
the down
good.
south was not that good.
That one's actually really good.
It's right there.
And believe it or not,
the Hopsecutioner.
But believe it or not, it's still not as hoppy as I would have thought for like an IPA.
Huh.
I mean, it does have the hops, but again, it's not an.
I'm gonna try it here in a sec, probably when we hit our headlines. But I mean, look, it definitely. I don't think you're going to be disappointed if you're a Batman fan at all.
No,
and to me, I think we all agreed it was almost as if Matt Reeves took the beloved animated series and brought it to life.
Well, that's for me like the set pieces. I want to say that because you talked about Gothic, it's not as abstract as Tim Burton's Gothic, but like when you get to his mansion or whatever with like them sitting at the table and all the chandeliers.
I love that.
That was a very Gothic art style that is like straight from like the animated series or some of the comic books where like Gotham did have like this kind of Gothic look to it. And not, like I said, not the over-the-top Gothic look that Tim Burton went for, but a more like actual like Gothic decor that you would see in real life.
It wasn't dark and brooding. It was just, it definitely had the same architecture style.
Even the art in the mansion in the 1985 or 89 film is funny because you've got that scene with Vicky Vale and the other guy, and he's like looking at these statues and these different kinds of armor.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, look, this is the guy from the Wicker People.
Yeah.
And it's just, it is funny. And Batman, Bruce Wayne jokes about it. He's like, I don't even know if I've ever been in this room before. And it's like
every single building in Tim Burton's Batman has like gargoyles and stuff all
yes,
over
and
it.
that carried over to the Joel Schumacher stuff.
Oh yeah.
And
Joel Schumacher went even way.
Yeah, it was way bad because it was also like most of that was digitally
created. You had the giant
created.
statues just randomly in the middle of Gotham. I was like, what is this giant like?
Who would erect that?
Yeah,
come on,
it was just so random. Yeah,
but no, it definitely is a different. As much as you think you've seen Batman done in all these different ways, it definitely takes a different approach in the subtlest ways, but it makes it different enough that it's still a fresh take.
Yeah. And
it's worth seeing, and I'm definitely interested in seeing where Matt Reeves goes from here.
Yeah, I agree.
But it was not, I would say, at least as of yet, because it was only one film, the definitive Batman movie that I'll turn to. And I think part of the reason I'm
watching
still,
it again
it's in my top 3 of all Batman films.
Oh wow!
I will say that
when it pops, it's supposed to be on HBO Max in April. I'm totally watching.
Oh
it
yeah!
again.
Oh, I will too.
Yeah,
I will too. And I think I even told we all actually agreed to that at the end of the seeing it the first time. It was like there because I think I specifically said about the pacing issue. It was like it wasn't. It definitely felt like 3 hours.
Yeah.
And I think that was because the pace was slower, but it wasn't that the pace was off or that it rushed in some parts and slowed down in others. It was pretty consistent.
Honestly, because thinking about it, I was gonna say I can honestly say some of the side plots with Catwoman I think could have been consolidated a little bit. You got the stuff with like her roommate, and then with Carmine Falcone. And some of the stuff that was just...
I honestly didn't like hated her backstory.
Yeah, well, that's not from the comics. That was definitely made for the movie, which is fine. But yeah, I didn't think it was...
They tried to give her certain stakes that were pivotal, and I think made her a central character.
I think it was a little
we could already use that.
Yeah.
I was like, they could have thought of another reason for her to want to get at Falcone than what they did. I just thought like it was kind of more of a lazier reason to need her to... And I feel like maybe they could have simplified some of that. But again, like she is an integral character to the Batman mythos, so I understand why he want like I'm not upset at all. And I think Zoe Kravitz definitely was like personified that like that feminine mystique that Catwoman has. Like I thought she did better than Anne Hathaway. So
oh yeah.
And I really do hope again, first movie.
But I do think Anne Hathaway had a better backstory.
Agreed.
So,
no, I do too.
I think Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman has the best origin story.
Michelle Pfeiffer has been the best, yeah.
Wow.
And the sexiest too.
Well, Anne Hathaway is pretty good looking. I don't know. All that her outfit. I do like I do like how both
like-
in his, she had on like the little night vision goggles that flipped up, make cat ears.
Oh, yeah.
I liked her toboggan in this one.
Well, that had the
Well, that had the little.
Yeah.
It had
Yeah.
enough
Yeah.
of it. Yeah, I
Yeah.
like.
They have to do
Again,
that so that you
well,
know she's Catwoman.
But I love
and
again.
she's got a lot of cats.
Just like the practicality with the gun flare, the muzzle flash. I'm like, I love when, again, that's what makes it unique and creative is when you have people who thought about these details and they implement them in such a realistic way. And when it's done to a satisfying extent, it lets you know, okay, this could actually, it makes you realize, okay, this is a real world that we're seeing.
Yeah.
It's creatively, and fully fleshed out. And I like that. I'm looking forward to where this goes. I will say, I hope for the sake, and granted, it's part of one of the lessons learned in this Batman film, but I don't know if I really like the whole moody Bruce Wayne character. I want there to be a little bit. They teased it a little bit with his
Maybe-
relationship with the kid.
I say maybe after like his
feel like
now
that-
him learning to be like this kind of a symbol of hope. And
yeah,
stuff.
Yes,
It's
I
just
feel
I
like
agree.
that's gonna have to change.
maybe he won't be
Yeah,
as
that'll
moody
be an
in the
evolution
future.
of
Yeah.
his.
I
character.
agree. If he's
Agreed.
still moody for the rest of the movies, then
Yeah,
we have a
and
problem.
he needs a haircut. Just get a haircut.
Yeah,
Come on, Bruce.
yeah.
Come on, you got enough money.
You're fighting crime. You don't want hair in your eyes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And
That
I know
doesn't
he has
make
the
any
cowl
sense.
on, but still,
It doesn't make
I
any
think
sense.
we need
Yeah.
to move on to headlines now. though.
Yeah, you're right. All right. So yeah, let's go ahead and roll that wonderful headline open.
Ba-da-ba-ba-ba-bow. Oh, wow.
Now it's my turn to open up the next
Yeah,
beer. You all have tried it. Sean, you didn't tell us what you thought about this one.
he did.
It's very good.
The Hopsecution.
When I
It
said
is good.
Yeah, he echoed my sentiment after I said it. Like
Okay.
he said what he felt. You just weren't listening to him. Like you never listened to us.
It's good. Try it.
Brandon only cares about his own opinion.
Gosh, it always overflows.
Yeah, that's a good one. It ain't. It's not flat if it does that.
It's good. It's
well,
good.
but it almost got on the board. Thankfully,
Again.
It didn't. Yep, it always.
Don't get on the board.
Oh gosh. Okay, hold on. I'm still pouring. I'm
Are
trying
we
to put the whole can.
are we going in the first headline here?
Yep,
Is that where-
that's our big one.
So,
it's the one we teased.
Speaking of Batman, some people, if depending on what theater you go to, AMC, and where you went to see it, because it wasn't nationwide yet, you might have paid about $1.50 more for your ticket to see the Batman.
I didn't.
Over in L.A.,
I
California,
didn't pay any more than the $20 a month I normally do for my Stubs
AMC
membership.
Stubs.
Yep.
Yeah, I did find this interesting because I saw the article in one of my breaks, where and it was intriguing to me because of the fact
That beer is good. I'm just
It
gonna
is-
say
it is very good.
It
It's good. I'm enjoying this a lot better than that down south.
It was AMC's, yeah, okay. AMC CEO Adam Aaron he says dropped the bombshell this week by announcing the exhibition chain will charge more for tickets to the Batman as part of a variable pricing experiment. And I believe you said that you read it was only in
It's
Los
in that same
Angeles.
article. It's only in L.A.
For right now. And apparently this is something they've already done in Europe, but now they're experimenting with it over here. And the article Variety posted had linked back to some things that Steven Spielberg and George Lucas had said. George Lucas specifically in 2013. I don't see when. I think Spielberg was like 2009, even that far back, where they talked about they saw a paradigm shift coming where you would have mostly your blockbusters in theaters and smaller releases, and you would have to pay more for the blockbusters than you would the smaller releases, or even pay based on your seating, which is something they do in Europe right now too. So, like, if you want the best seats in your movie theater, you might have to pay more. Or if you're going to
Yeah.
see the biggest blockbuster, you might have to pay more as opposed to the small movie.
What
So
do
how
you all think?
I think it's stupid. I mean, I get their point in
Yeah.
that if everything's going
Great
to,
point. Let's move
Yeah.
on.
No, I just
think it's stupid.
I get the point that if everything's going to streaming and theaters need to make up the difference, it's like, especially if you go down to only having like one community theater again because everything's on
Well,
streaming.
here's the thing. Will prices for movies that are not blockbusters be less than what they are now?
Oh no, they're not
I
going to get any
guarantee.
cheaper.
Oh,
I don't think
Oh,
they're
so it
gonna-
only
No.
goes one way.
Yes, it
It
only
only
goes
gets
up.
more. Here's my problem, because I mentioned this in the text. As far as it's a different beast than other, like when they're talking about sporting events or going to a theater house to watch a play. A theater play only has like one or two showings a night, and you're packing like several hundred people into this huge room.
Yep.
Whereas you've got like maybe not even 100 people in one theater screening, and you're showing this movie 7, 8, maybe 10 times a day. So you have multiple screenings.
Multiple theater houses.
Multiple
in
theaters.
which you're showing the same
multiple
movie.
rooms. Yeah, you got like 4 or 5 screenings in one theater, and it's in like 5 or 6 theaters, especially the blockbusters. There's no way. It's like, yeah, okay.
The Batman?
No. I'm trying to think of a more independent movie, something like Wes Anderson. Wes Anderson's only going to be in 1 or 2 theaters. They're going to be smaller theaters. But the Batman's screening in IMAX. It's screening in 5 or 6 of the other theaters. It's the biggest movie. So it's like you're already getting
when
all this
you hear
income.
Showcase 20 here in Louisville for IMAX,
They have
it's
20
like, no,
theater screenings.
You got
and
20
10 of them
theaters,
are the Batman.
Probably.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's like it's completely different because you have more screenings, more opportunities. You're making more money that way, whereas a theater house or the Super Bowl is a one-time event. So yeah, you charge way more because it's only a once in a life, like a
Broadway
once a year
play.
thing.
Even if it's picked up and it's successful, it's those characters, those actors. I mean, look, if you really had the chance to go see Hamilton, and it was the Lin-Manuel Miranda version up in New York, you only got to see that. And again, it was so successful that they did a taping of it to put on Disney Plus to try to give people the original experience. But that's the difference, is you're seeing something unique, especially in a live performance, that you don't get in the same movie.
It's a more specific scenario, yeah.
And when you talk about when you're running something, especially now, it's way cheaper than it used to be with film. You're literally sending out the same exact file, digital file,
on a thumb drive,
on a hard drive to all of these different megaplexes that put it in. And yes, the equipment it's run on, whether if it's in an IMAX type studio, it is more pristine. But we were already having to pay for a premium ticket price when it came to that anyway.
I mean, IMAX is like $20 a ticket now.
Yeah, which is why we do a Stubbs A list. And of course, for us, that was the thing. We were like, here's my ultimate issue. We may be getting a deal on Stubbs list or Stubbs A list because we're willing to pay that, but we're also not casual moviegoers.
Yeah, we go
a casual moviegoer who they're trying to now hopefully maybe pull one over on because they don't always look at the ticket prices. They just know this movie's out, we want to go see it. They may only go see that one movie one big blockbuster movie every 6 months.
Yeah.
So in their minds, they're thinking, oh gosh, that ticket price is high, but that must be the way it is nowadays. And they're not looking at the other ticket prices.
They don't realize they're being charged more to see the Batman because they don't go every week like we do.
Exactly. And especially if they're not interested in the other small films or even looking at the other small films that are available. And who's going to notice a $1.50 difference? But the problem with that method is that I think what you're really seeing, and it was funny because even George Lucas had quoted something like $50 to $75 to even $100 a ticket for unique experiences. I'm like,
no.
When I'm in like 5D.
Hey, when George comes up with a theory, he's got to go all in on it. I mean,
well, we already know about
look
that.
What we've seen, like George Spielberg's comments were kind of more grounded with some of
For
what he was saying.
$50, Robert Pattinson better be on stage acting it out in front of me.
Well, that's the point.
Yeah.
Well, and I don't know, some Broadway performances, it's even more than that if you're doing one ticket.
Yeah.
Per person.
Now, what Spielberg had said is you're going to have to pay $25 to see the next Iron Man, and you're probably only going to have to pay $7 to see Lincoln.
But here's the thing.
And I think he has like
that. But he's at least underscoring that if certain films,
Spielberg said that
that was
George Lucas.
Yeah.
Well, no. George Lucas had the quote about like 150.
Oh it just says Spielberg added. You're going to have to pay $25. Sorry.
Yeah.
But the thing is if you think of it that way, he's at least including the idea that a lesser film or a lesser budget. That's also the other thing that baffled my mind, because the theaters who are showing these films are paying for the equipment and the theater houses themselves to show them in. And yeah, they may have to pay.
They're not paying for the movie.
They're not
the production.
They're
cost.
not paying $200 million to fund the Batman.
Yeah.
The studio's eating that cost. If their movie fails, the theater's not eating the cost of that it took to make that movie.
Right.
The production company is. So the theater house may be paying the cost because they put it in 5 theater houses, but at the same time, it's a flop because it's a big blockbuster. But you know what they're going to do? They're going to go take another movie that's showing at the same time and say, well, now we're going to put that in that theater instead of this other flop.
Yep.
We're not going to keep the same movie.
That's
there.
That's what theaters do. It's like if that movie's not generating income,
it's out in 2 weeks.
They pull it from their screenings and they screen something that does make them money.
Yeah, I mean, this instance right here is on the theater, but do you think there will ever be a day where we see the production companies telling the theater, if you want to show our film, you're going to have to charge $25
we already
a
did.
ticket?
COVID.
I'm just saying, and then you'd have a Focus Feature is going to say, well, if you want to show our film, it's $7 a ticket.
But again,
then
you're
going to have Marvel
Studios
Studios saying it's $25 a ticket.
Well, they technically already do that based on because that gets into how the ticket is divvied up based on the price of when it's released.
Each week, the theater gets a little bit bigger percentage.
Right. But eventually, they're going to want for these. When we get into the $300 and $400 million movies, they're going to want more money for each ticket, and they're going to want a higher percentage of that. So the theater there, in turn, has to charge more for each ticket, which gives it the appearance that you're paying more for the bigger budget film,
right?
When in reality,
well, that's what they're banking on.
Yeah,
that's what the theater, I think, is banking on. The problem I have with that is because we know, and I think most people, I mean, if you went in and the Batman ticket price was $25, that's why they're kind of edging it up.
Yeah.
People are going to be like, $25?
Yeah.
No. Heck no. I'm not taking my family of 4 to go $100
yeah.
For an outing.
One movie?
Hell no.
Yeah.
I mean, I already spend that in general because little Sally and Jimmy over here need a big bucket of popcorn.
Yeah.
And that's where we know the theaters make their money. I think the problem is kind of, and this is what I think George Lucas was getting at, is he said, you're going to have these big budget movie houses, theater chains. That's what they're going to exist for, not for the smaller budget. That's what the small screen streaming services are going to be for. Again, though, the problem with that approach, I think, is that then you get the muddied waters of, because we already have all this content that's out there that you can't consume, you have movies that just get lost in the shuffle. Whereas at least it was thought that if a movie was big enough to get a theatrical release, then it was worth your ticket price, or at least an admission, to show some love and support, some indie filmmaking. But the other question I have is this really a problem? Because I don't think it's that you have these big budget movie houses that we need. We already have those. But I think it's because we've seen this over the course of COVID with AMC specifically, and that is, how many theaters do you own and how many territories? And are you a little mile wide and an inch deep where you're spread way too thin because you're this big movie
AMC.
Theater owner that all of a sudden now needs all this income to support all of these, these cinemas, and you can't do it. And it's like, maybe you spread yourself a little too thin in supporting all of these locations that you truly can't.
Yeah.
Because I don't see Regal doing it. Cinemark's not doing it. And yeah, AMC's saying they're pulling Europe out of the hat, saying, well, we've done this over there for years.
It's like good, but still, it's AMC doing it.
Yeah.
We don't know that. I mean, I'd have to look up. I can't say for sure, but I don't know that Cinemark and Regal, and I don't even know if they have movie. I would say Cinemark probably does have overseas theaters, but are they doing it overseas? If not, then why is it only AMC?
Yeah.
Because I can tell you right now.
I'm going to Google that right now.
I guarantee you, we go spend, granted, like we said, we're Stubbs A-list members, but if it was $25 a ticket, and we were willing to pay it for something like the Batman, because, there's plenty of people in that boat who are willing to go and shell out the money because they know it's going to be a blockbuster. And those are the ticket prices that AMC is willing to raise. The funny thing is, though, I don't see the bathrooms getting cleaner.
No.
I don't see the seats that are out of
actually
order
biggest issue.
Getting fixed.
Yes, that is a.
I don't see the return on my investment.
If you go to Blankenbaker, it's like if I'm gonna pay more money for a ticket, I'm getting reclining seats.
Yep.
And I'm getting leather reclining seats. I'm getting clean bathrooms. I'm getting an arcade to take the kids to afterwards. Like, there's lots of different things that go into that, and I think that's what kind of like. I see George Lucas's point here because he talks about the movie business becoming more like the Broadway. But there's a different experience on Broadway than there is in a movie theater. And he says everything else is going to look like cable television on TiVo. And I agree with that. If you've got 4D theaters with these amazing seats, bigger screens, even louder, more immersive sound, and you've got smells and temperature changes and all that crap that they are leaning towards in some theaters. Like, if that's the experience that $50 gets me, I'll do that once or twice a year.
But it's so funny.
But then again, once I have that experience,
about it being a theme park ride.
I know, but once I have that experience, then going to AMC IMAX is going to be like TiVo or cable TV. It's going to be weak sauce compared to what you can get at the 4D or 5D theater. So I do feel like, at some point, the experience is going to change to the point where it is more intimate, more prestigious, and more of a treat to go to certain theaters, but I just don't see that happening in every single theater. You're still going to have the small theaters like we go to, and those are going to be something we have to settle for because
even,
of the cost.
But you even brought it up with the reclining seats and just
Every theater has
being
it now.
clean.
Cinemark has that.
Exactly.
And they're clean. When I went and saw Spider-Man No Way Home in Cinemark, I saw it in XD. And I mean, it was ceiling to floor, wall to wall.
Yeah.
And I mean, granted, it's not
nice.
it's not the same as IMAX, but I mean, the sound was still good. They had reclining seats, and it was clean, and the staff was very courteous. And I was like, wow,
You're getting what you pay for.
It's like, and granted, I'm not abandoning AMC because like right now the Stubbs
$20 based on how often we
Yeah.
go.
going
it's a
every
deal.
week and pay. Yeah, it's like it's way cheaper, but it's one of those things where it's like, man, I wish AMC could get their crap together and be just as good at giving you the service that Cinemark is. And I did Google it. Cinemark did start testing variable pricing this year. So
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that it's something that they now not here yet, but
Yeah.
apparently they're playing with it too, which is kind of like.
Well, I don't. Here's the thing. It's weird because it's like it depends. To me, I'm okay with variable pricing, but then it goes back to what Sean said. It depends on what I get for my money.
Yeah.
And if you're going to see a Broadway show, I'm immediately thinking these are live performers that are putting on a live. I mean, my mom and dad love every year we get them tickets. This is our Christmas gift to them every year. We get them tickets to 6 shows at Derby Dinner Playhouse.
Oh yeah.
Now, for those who are not local here in the Louisville area,
We've been thinking about doing season tickets to
is it Louisville Arts or the
Actors Theater.
Actors Theater.
because it's $200 a person, but that's for 6 shows.
Yeah.
And so you can go to any 6 shows you
the
want.
The great thing about Derby Dinner is it's not only just a live performance; it's dinner and a dinner and a show.
Yeah.
You go there, and my mom and dad have raved about it. They talk about the food is actually
It is
legitimate.
It is.
It's
I've
food.
been, and it is amazing. In fact, I was looking at. I think it's Derby Dinner Playhouse that I was looking at the shows that they have listed for this year, and almost every single one of them. I was like, oh man, I'd love to go see that. So this year, I think would be a good year to do like the season, like the whole.
Well, because again, they're offering something that they know that thinking outside the box and coming up
their
with a
ticket
way
prices aren't so. Like, I feel like so excessively more than like going to the theater.
Well,
they are more, but it's
they're not as outrageous as you think compared to what you get.
Yes, exactly.
And that's exactly what you have to argue here on behalf of the theaters. I wouldn't mind paying more to go see a movie in the theater. The difference is you've had the theater model for such a long time ingrained in how people attend. Everybody expects ticket prices to go up here and there for the fact that okay, that's inflation, that's just a yearly thing that you're going to have to look at. But when it comes to the same exact experience, of course, the technology that exists today in IMAX, as far as picture and sound, is far better than what we got 10 years ago.
Oh, no doubt.
I'm willing to pay a premium price for it, whether I had Stubbs A-list or not. Some people aren't, but guess what? Then you don't have to go to IMAX. You can go down 3 theaters down the row, and it's the same exact movie, but not in pristine format. The problem with raising the ticket prices for blockbusters, somehow it insinuates this idea that there is a different experience that you're getting.
Well,
and what I'm sitting here thinking is, no, I'm funding you to basically make up the difference for the cost that you haven't budgeted, because I haven't seen the cleanliness of the theater, the courteous,
I don't want to pay more for a bathroom floor that's covered in piss, that has a paper towel holder that's broken in half and has
you
been
fix
sitting
those
on the
things
counter
first,
for
and then tell me I'm getting a premium
that goes
experience.
into the fact too that I think our AMC theater is piss poor, literally.
Yeah.
And I think when you compare that to the theater in LA that's charging $1.50 more, I'm sure you're getting that $1.50 more experience. I'm starting to look at these movie ticket sales and raise in variable prices and comparing it to, just popped in my mind, comparing it to a concert. I went and saw Stephen Curtis Chapman for $25 a ticket. I was in the 3rd row from the front. I could have reached out and touched Stephen Curtis Chapman. Now again, that's a contemporary Christian artist. I understand that's not a huge pop sensation, but if I was seeing Metallica in Freedom Hall, it would have been $50 to $75 a ticket in the nosebleed section. You are paying more money for the same facility, the same treatment, but you're paying more money because of the artist.
Because the band's
because you're paying for the popularity. So I can see that in comparison with the film, you're paying for the popularity and the blockbuster nature of the film. That doesn't mean that Stephen Curtis Chapman is any worse of an artist than Metallica or Def Leppard or three doors down or whatever you want to say.
But here's the difference.
But again, I'm just saying there is some kind of a difference, or they wouldn't charge the ticket premium.
But the difference is that, for one, it's the same show as a movie, and you can put it on as many screens. So if one showing it fills up and sells out, you've got another theater that you can put the same exact movie.
Oh no, yeah,
where
I'm
you're
not
going to get
arguing
these
that
same.
it's greedy.
But no. I don't think
greedy.
it's about greed.
I think it is.
I think it's ultimately about they're coming up short based on what people are getting out and seeing. They're seeing
for
that
the past
obviously.
2 years, no one's been really going
exactly.
to the theaters.
Yeah.
I mean, even since the COVID bubble has supposedly burst, I mean, look at all the articles. We talked about it back in December when they were trying to defend West Side Story. It's like, no, it wasn't because of COVID and Omicron. It was a flop, and it still is a flop. And at the end of the day, what it comes down to is if you do not have a movie that people want to see, they're not going to go see it. And the theaters then do have to answer for that. Because what happens when production companies are willing to shell out millions of dollars, and trust me, they're pissed off that it's a flop, they're losing money, but the theater houses are too. And yet the theater houses are the ones that are saying, well, we don't get to close up shop, or we don't have these millions of dollars we don't have another blockbuster that's just going to suddenly hit that's going to make all this money. They're waiting for every single blockbuster that comes, like a Batman, or hell, even like a Jackass, that's going to come in there and make a lot of money.
Disney can afford to make a flop because they're going to have a Marvel or a Star Wars movie or some live-action remake that's going to make millions of dollars. So it's like, okay, this movie flopped, but we know we have 3 more coming in the works that are going to be massive hits.
Yeah, I mean,
So
but the difference for me is, I guess I'm saying,
And here's the
I'm
thing.
willing to pay $25 to see Endgame. I ain't willing to pay $25 to see West Side Story. I don't even know if I going into it not knowing anything about it, it could have been the best movie of the year, which it absolutely wasn't. But I'm still not willing to pay $25 to see that movie.
True.
When I would pay that gladly to see Avengers Endgame, and not knowing anything about it going into it.
But then, in the same token, I better be able to go up there and say, well, I'll pay $7 to see French Dispatch, and they'd be okay with it.
True.
But they won't be.
No, I understand.
They're still
that.
going to charge
They're
me
still
the
gonna-
base
yeah.
ticket price.
Yeah.
They're only increasing the prices of the blockbusters
Yes.
because in their minds they're saying, well, we know people are going to come see this.
Yeah.
So we're going to cash in while we can because we're making up for the shortfalls in other areas where we can't. And granted, I know it's a chicken or the egg kind of thing when it comes
Yeah.
to
The length of the film too, to me, and I'm sorry.
No. Go
I
ahead.
think
go
that's
ahead.
why
me,
AMC chose
That's
the
one of the
Batman.
things too. Is it's like you got a 3-hour movie. That's
less
that's
showings.
less showtimes.
Yep.
Yeah,
That's
so
true.
for a 3-hour
I
movie, you
thought the
charge a
same
little
thing.
bit more.
I was like, why did they pick the Batman? Not only is it a blockbuster, but they're like, oh, it's 3 hours. I bet we can make up a little bit of money difference.
No,
by charging an extra
absolutely.
$1.50.
That's very true. And honestly, I wouldn't mind them negotiating a deal with the production company and say, hey, listen, because we have less showtimes and you approved a 3-hour film,
Yeah.
a 3-hour cut,
Yeah.
then we deserve a bigger chunk of the money up front. Instead of maybe 10% the first week, we deserve 15.
Well,
And take it out of the production studios. But granted, I know that's harder to deal with because where have we been in the last year and a half or 2 years?
Yeah.
Oh, the studios have had control of the theaters.
Yeah.
They've dictated what's going on.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, that's where the buying power comes into play. But I think this is part and parcel the problem with AMC having become the behemoth they are over the last decade, where they've said, hey, theater business is a booming. We know we got steady flow of blockbusters year in and year out. You can't anticipate the idea of a pandemic, or at least they didn't plan for it.
Yeah.
We saw all of the constant articles back and forth. We talked about them here on the show with regard to being in bankruptcy trouble. How much of that was legitimate or not, we don't know. We never will. But we know that if they're the biggest theater chain in the country and they're talking about doing this, and now granted, I know it was in LA, but it's still funny that it's like, maybe you should think about getting your own priorities in order first.
Yeah, I agree.
And making sure that you've got your bases covered there before you start raising ticket prices on the person who's coming to support you in general, and, sending it down the line, trickling it down to their pockets. Because for me, yeah, I pay AMC Stubs A-List. But if I'm a concerned parent that doesn't want to pay that much more for a ticket price, and all it takes is me looking on my phone, and I can go see the same exact movie, because I don't know the difference between IMAX and a regular showing.
Yeah.
I can go see the same exact film at Cinemark and it's the same distance from my house,
Well, heck, Cinemark
and it's
has
$1.50 difference.
XD, so and most people
Yeah.
don't
It's
know the
close-
difference
it's
between
Why not?
close enough to
Yeah.
IMAX.
Why
yeah.
wouldn't I go there?
Well, and for me, again, I would be more okay with paying a higher price if I knew that the seat I was going to sit in wasn't busted up, or that yes,
I mean, it
or-
really does
Yeah.
come back to
Yeah.
your experience with the theater itself, not
True.
just your experience with the movie.
Or
Absolutely.
the
Back to the
sound is
time,
actually on point because there's been
Yeah.
plenty of theaters we've gone into, not IMAX, it's always good, but some of their other theaters is pathetic.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Halloween
It's trash.
Kills, the theater we saw.
Oh,
was,
yeah, that
was god awful.
Yeah. And again, that's a movie that I'm sitting here
Or
thinking
that the damn
where
curtain
I'm
goes all the way back when it's time
In
to
this
go
theater,
back.
it's not worth the money. That's
No.
when I want to walk out and say, I want half of my money back because you
Yeah.
didn't give me the same experience that I could have got at another theater or even in
Yeah.
a different theater in
Yep.
your house.
Yep.
Say, Sean
I mean,
watched half of the last
AMC's
007. with
Well,
the curtain
and I
in the
hate
way,
to
so-
say it,
Yes.
but no. Going back to your point, Sean, and I guess this will be the last one because I know we're dragging this
Yeah,
on.
yeah,
But it is. It's like you said, Sean, about even talking about the different theater experiences. You've got to offer me something that I'm willing to come and pay that premium price for. I don't think sitting up. I mean, for one, theater, unless it's assigned seating, and even then, you can still pick where you want unless it's taken.
Mm-hmm.
But the theater seats in a theater are mostly designed more for where you could sit wherever you want, that you're comfortable for your viewing angle.
Sure. Yeah.
But there's not a bad seat in the house. There's a difference between, the seat behind the bar in a theater and sitting way up in the back row
Yeah.
than there is in a stadium
Yeah.
that literally
Start.
seats tens of thousands.
Yeah.
Where you're
And
front
you're
row
right
or
in the
nosebleed,
pit
yeah.
or waiting the nosebleeds.
Yeah.
There's a difference. That's the reason
Yeah.
why you pay the premium price. And again, it's a live performance. And I'm sure there's been plenty of people who paid a huge ticket price to go see a band that they love, that they're willing to pay
up
out
close, yeah.
yeah.
up close, and the show sucked. And I'm sure they
Oh,
walked
yeah.
out disappointed.
Yeah.
But again, that's the gamble you take with a live performance. And you know that going forward and paying the price you do.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're still getting a one-of-a-kind situation that you don't get when you go to the theater. And all I'm saying is, hey, AMC, back off, fix up your theaters. Maybe you have to close some or sell some off in different markets to make up the bottom line of your budget. But before you go charging ticket prices at an exorbitant amount for blockbusters, let's actually give people the experience that are worth those ticket prices first. Maybe that should be your first goal.
Yeah.
Give the consumer not only what they want, but what they don't even know they want yet. Think about that first before you start raising ticket prices to
Or
cover
just
your own
keep doing
ass.
it in LA and not anywhere else because I don't care about those people.
Well, and they're used to paying more.
I mean, who knows? In LA, you might be sitting next to Tom Hanks in the theater.
If you
I'd
could
be
promise
worth
that,
$1.50 more.
I'd pay $1.50 for that.
Maybe Robert Downey Jr. will, run across at the Iron Man show
I
or
think
whatever.
Tobey Maguire did.
I'd pay
Swing
$1.50
in.
more if Gary Busey was in the audience since
Hey, if
releasing
Tobey
Bastard.
Maguire
Oh,
slide
man.
right down in front of you and try to kiss you upside down,
Oh,
I'd pay
man.
$1.50 more for that.
Oh heck yeah,
Yeah.
that would be worth like $1,000.
Yeah.
He did crash I think a No Way Home showing in some city. I don't know if it was L.A. or not.
Tobey
Yeah.
Maguire.
But it was,
Well,
he
they
just
said
walked in.
Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield snuck into one of the screenings.
That's
to
what
wa-
it was, yeah.
They snuck in together to one of the screenings to watch it to see the audience's reaction, which was great. But then Charlie Cox, who plays Daredevil, recently went because he was told so much about how many people cheered when he showed on the screen. So he went with his wife because he wanted to see people cheer.
Nobody cheered.
Nobody cheered. And he was
Well,
disappointed.
it's been
but
out
but it's
for
been
that
out
long.
for
Yeah,
so
if we
long.
would have
Yeah.
went and saw it opening night,
Exactly.
people would have cheered.
He said he was
Exactly.
disappointed because he was excited to see people cheer and nobody cheered. But it's like,
Well, he's
you
blind. He
wait.
can't see anything anyway.
I was like, yeah, you wait. I was like, you wait. Yeah, you definitely waited too long. It's like if
Yeah.
you wanted to see people cheer, you should have gone earlier. But
All right, well, those are our thoughts. We're going to talk about Netflix canceling in Russia, but what more do you need to know there?
they canceled
it.
everybody's membership over. They said
Well, they're going to
They
after
yeah.
after the end of this
Suspended
billing
or
cycle.
whatever, yeah.
It's canceled.
they're like, listen,
Yep.
make
we
Putin stop.
kind of
Listen.
Go back
Make-
and listen to
make
last
Putin
week's show.
stop. Yeah,
Go listen to last week's show, and we talk about whether or not it's good for certain businesses to get involved or whether
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
grandstanding. We have that whole discussion. It applies to
I
this
mean the
matter
fact that
as
it's been
well.
almost like a month later that they're doing it, I'm kind of but
Well,
whatever.
and apart from that, again, I don't want to get into it.
Yeah, yeah,
Listen to last week's show.
Yeah.
yeah,
Listen to last week's show.
all of that.
All of that is still applies.
The only other headline we already mentioned was the milk duds.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
how
Alrighty,
the
guys.
mighty have fallen.
Let's move on to our multimedia segment.
Multimedia.
Multimedia.
I do love
Sorry,
when you
I had to
say
do that.
I love it when you say it in
Multimedia.
your electronic voice.
Multimedia.
That's fantastic.
Are you not entertained?
Absolutely, I
See,
am.
there you go.
Alrighty.
Alrighty.
So look,
Let's do
this is actually one of those rare occasions, and we've done this before. So we're not talking about the press conference, but an Apple press conference did land today. We're not
did.
talking about the actual products that could
Which
be
is
done.
a good thing because I didn't watch it. I mean, I did scroll
I didn't
after
watch it
after
either.
the fact.
I don't watch them anymore.
Well, and that's kind of what our topic's
Yeah.
about. So let's talk about in general.
Yeah.
Has Apple lost their innovation?
Hell yeah, they have.
Mm.
I mean,
How can you say that if you haven't watched today's presser?
I said I went after the fact and looked at their at their products.
I'll say something, and when you get done,
Yeah.
that
I
has
was
to do
saying,
with why I didn't watch it.
After the fact, I looked at their products because I was interested, and like I told you, I've been interested in updating my iPad for a while because I'm pretty sure at this point they're intentionally making it run slower than it should be. But
No.
yeah,
No, your battery just is deteriorating.
yeah.
That's all.
I was just saying a couple months ago it would load up things a lot faster than it
Yeah.
is now. I don't know what the difference in a couple months is.
iOS
but
15
Your
is
battery's
great.
controlled by software
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
So
So, anyways, and I don't think their products are bad. Like they're still making it's better than like Windows. Like I would still say it's better than the rest, but it's kind of like they used to every time they came out with something. I was like, I have to have that. I updated my iPhone like almost every year because I had to have it. I haven't updated this in 3 years because they've just been gradual increases in my opinion. Like I haven't felt a need to I need a new phone because that phone does
Do you
something
think
mine
that's
doesn't.
planned
What?
on their part?
To no longer want people to buy every year because that's kind of a dumb.
Well, here's the
business
thing.
model.
No. You say that, but what if their analytics show that they know people are typically not going to spend based on the price that the products
Yeah,
are now
every
right,
year.
yeah.
They're not going to spend that every year.
But that's
So
why
they
you
wait
kinda-
for every 2 generation cycles, and there's a data that shows them we know people will update their device in so many years.
I would 100
and we're aiming for that to
I
be
say,
what makes
I
them
would
update.
I would 100% agree with that. Like when Jobs was alive and you had like the 4, then the 4S, and like 5S. But now it's almost like here we are 3 years later, and I still have it like from the 11 to 12 to 13. Like technically 12 would be the down year, and then 13 would be the next big one.
Yeah.
I didn't think 13 was that much
No.
more drastic than my 11. So it's like here we are, almost. This is going to be the 3rd year. And I still, unless they wow me, I still don't really see a huge reason to upgrade unless they bog my phone down as bad as they're doing the iPad, and I have to upgrade.
I agree with you about the 2-year plan. I do think that's planned, but I think it's
Yeah.
planned for maybe a different reason because when you think about in the day of contracts, you had a 2-year contract. You couldn't upgrade until that contract was up. Now you have 2-year financing.
Yep.
When we buy a phone through Verizon or AT&T, whoever, if you don't have $1,000 to drop on the phone, you're paying for it for
Monthly.
24 months.
Unless you purchase through
The next upgrade thing?
No. Yeah, where you just pay. It's financed or it's leased basically.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
every year you get the new update by just paying
and
monthly.
you could upgrade the very next year, but you have to send your phone back, which is fine if
Yeah.
you're not someone who.
I'm
feels
just
like you
saying
need
that
to keep it.
that's
Yeah.
an option they've
No,
made available.
there is that option, but I think the 2-year model definitely has to do
originally,
initially with the fact that you had contracts or you had 24-month financing. I can't upgrade my 12 Pro until this time next year. I bought it this time last year. I don't get an upgrade for 24 months
unless you were to pay it out.
unless I was to pay it outright, and that's fine. I owe like $500 more on this $1,099 phone.
Yeah.
So I think that's absolutely. I mean, I think it's ridiculous.
You
But
paid it though.
I paid it because I mean I needed a new phone, and that was the one that was out at the time. And it's like I'm stuck in Apple's ecosystem. I have to have it.
Right.
So it's just
It's weird because
they don't innovate anymore.
I was gonna say to me they're not. I don't know. They're evolutions, not revolutions.
Yes.
And here's the thing, though. I don't think they've been on that train for a long time.
Oh yeah.
And I would
I'm
say
still waiting on
definitely.
this Apple like television and Apple car. What happened to those?
Well, they would say they kind of answered on the television front, not in terms of a TV.
Not in the actual
yeah,
with
it's
the
an
box,
Apple TV, but then you also have like you have your
Yeah.
what is it? 8K.
Well, heck,
retina
one time you
display
had
or
the
5K
rumor about
retina
them
display.
making a gaming system, which I think that was always just a
Oh,
rumor.
the Pippin. That was back.
Pippin?
The
Yeah.
Pippin
Oh,
was
yes,
back
it
in
was
the
back
They are
90s.
they
yeah.
are making
talking
augmented
about
reality
like more-
goggles, but they're going to be $3,000. Who's
See,
going to buy that when you can go
but
buy
here-
an Oculus Quest for $200?
True, but here's the thing with that. That's where I get kind of aggravated, even with the Apple Car.
oh, that'll be $200,000.
It could be, or it could be priced alongside Tesla. Because here's the thing. Apple, what I've noticed about them since Steve Jobs left and Tim Cook took over, Tim Cook is not a visionary.
He's a businessman.
He's a businessman.
He is a good businessman.
He is. And he's smart about knowing how they need to adapt. And ultimately, I think he knows the quality of their devices is still above par. I wouldn't say it's near what it used to be in terms of I still get things that are broken sometimes that maybe, yeah, they do fix. I was just talking about this with my brother recently in terms of the AirPods.
Yeah.
There's sync issues sometimes when I put them in, and things don't just work like
Yeah.
they used to.
Yeah.
And that's part of frustration.
We did that like at the exact
Sorry.
same time. No, it's just
Yeah.
funny. It's like
Yeah.
you just hear this
Yeah.
echo of, yeah.
Yeah.
We've been around each other too long.
But no, I do think that Steve Jobs, even in and of itself, gets a lot of the credit for the innovation simply because of the new product lines. And the only product line that is brand new that Tim Cook introduces the watch.
Yeah.
However, the watch is part of the ecosystem as to why I can't fully switch to Android because there is no other like it. There in terms of quality.
Yep.
Um,
Again, smart business move, and you get everybody locked into this ecosystem of the watch and the iPad and your computer and your phone
Right.
all talk to each other. Yeah.
But I would say their innovation has changed from product lines to services and to how they keep that ecosystem alive. And not in terms of, because look, they've come out with some still like failed product lines. I mean, look, you can only buy the HomePod Mini anymore. The regular HomePod's not even available.
Yeah.
Apple TV Plus, we've all talked about how, they are willing to invest in something until they get that one killer feature that they know latches people on. And then what they do great, better than any other company in the world, which is why they are the wealthiest company in the world, I think, is they attack the essence of why that is so popular. And they don't just duplicate it mindlessly thinking, well, we just throw out tons of replicas and then it'll succeed. They analyze why people are interested and they get to the root of what makes it so finite worthwhile for people to spend their money on. And they just nail it. Today their event wasn't necessarily innovative, but I even told you all the Mac Studio that was introduced that has their latest M1 chip. Now, granted, I will say in terms of, in a little aside, again, an innovative area that most people wouldn't think of is not a product
I would
line.
agree with what, yeah.
But I would say their CPUs
Yeah.
and doing things there where they integrate hardware and software to run on their platforms.
I do agree with
to
that.
be streamlined in such they finesse it so well that you can't emulate that experience on any other platform.
They do well with, the hardware.
because it's
and
all
their-
in-house.
Their chips and such. I will agree with that.
And so for me, when they introduced the Mac Studio, and literally the price of the Mac Studio for a 64 core, 128 gigabytes of RAM, again, it's their own graphics, on the die. It's on the system of, the chip. I think when I maxed it out, it was $5,799, $5,799.
Yeah.
Now that's a huge expense for a lot of
is.
people. But if you're talking prosumer, I spent on my PC that I built
that you've
4
had
years
quite a
ago
few issues with.
that I've had issues with because again, it's Windows. It's all it's a bunch of third-party manufactured parts that I put together in a box. Now, granted, I was able to get the performance at the time better for me in terms of price for performance, better than what if I paid for with a Mac. But at the same time, in just the matter of years, because they've now brought all of those parts in-house, I can buy for $700 more something that outperforms my PC by leaps and bounds. We're talking right now I could play back maybe 2 to 3. I got a 16-core processor. I know this means nothing to some of our listeners out there. 32 gigabytes of RAM. And granted, I've got 12 gigabytes of VRAM. I've got a great machine still. It's not lackluster by any means, but that was $5,000 4 years ago. I can buy that same machine now that doubles in its performance. And I know the Windows eggheads out there and people who would say, well, you could do the same thing. You could still get a hell of a lot more performance
You
and
could upgrade your PC cheaper than buying, but it's like, yeah, but
well,
you
actually,
constantly-
no, I can't. Not the route I went. I mean,
wow.
in terms of, I've looked into this.
I know
because
people do argue that. It's like, well, you could always upgrade your PC cheaper than buy, but it's...
I'm going to get into the weeds a little bit here just real quick. So I went the Ryzen Threadripper route, and I know people may not know that processor line. If I were to upgrade my processor, the die in which the processor fits onto the motherboard is no longer the same, so I have to upgrade the motherboard. To get an equivalent motherboard of the one that I have is
I'm laughing because I know what he's...
You know what I'm talking about. So I have to upgrade the motherboard too, and the one that is equivalent to the one I have now, which is top of the line, is $300 more than the one I paid for 4 years ago. So that's more money. The processor itself to upgrade, I'd get a hell of a lot more cores. I get 24. But 24 cores of that processor is $3,000 for the processor.
Yeah.
I can now, because Apple has taken the processors in-house and created their own, you look at a Mac Pro with an Intel Core processor and max it out with all this RAM. I mean, I know that you could put like a terabyte of RAM in a damn Mac Pro. It's insane.
Yeah.
But you put all that in there, and it's like $18,000. It's way outside my price range.
Yeah.
But the machine that they brought out today is well beyond what I have, and about the same price of what I paid for 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And it'll last you...
a lot longer.
For at least a decade.
My iMac that I still have that still works, it's not my daily driver, but that lasted 10 years. 10 years of production time. If I can get a 10-year life on a PC that cost me $5,000, that will well beyond pay for itself. And so I don't know if their innovation is any more in product lines as much as it is in the internals of the machine and ultimately in trying to, keep you in that ecosystem and ultimately say, hey, you may not want next year's upgrade or even the year after that, but we're going to keep evolving enough year over year that in 4 to 5 years, you're going to want an upgrade. And that's all we ask for. Because if we have enough that year over year, you have 1 to 2 to 3 different generations of people constantly buying your products, you get into that ecosystem.
Yeah. I was complaining about my iPad, but to be fair, like this iPad is almost 8 years. It's 8 years old, so it's like I've had it for 8 years. And it still runs fine. Like it annoys me at how it bogs down sometimes, but it does run way better than any PC I've ever owned that would be 8 years old. That's for sure. I have a MacBook that was a 2010 MacBook that I still, it doesn't hold a charge anymore, but I could easily buy a replacement battery. I just haven't. But other than not holding a charge anymore, I keep it plugged in and it runs fine. Yeah. It's a little slow, but it's 10 years old. It's faster than a 10-year-old Windows laptop.
Yeah. Oh, no doubt. No doubt. I can maybe. I've seen Windows. You can maybe get 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Decent.
Go ahead, Sean. Sorry.
I was just going to say my iPad is only 3 years old, and I already feel like it's like it doesn't do what I want it to do. It's not like it was when I had iOS 13 on it. So just the 2 iterations of software have completely bogged my iPad down.
And that would
there's
be
plenty
room
of
for
times I've
complaint.
wanted to throw this thing across the floor because I'm trying to open up a window that's taken way too long.
And I would blame, especially, and this is something that, again, I've had faith in Apple before, and they've let me down. This is something I'm hoping they improve upon in terms of now being on their own silicon, because when you do control the hardware development in the integration with the software, you get a streamlined performance that is like no other. And I will say, with your iPhones, my iPhone, I'm on the iPhone 11, and it's only been until the last few years that I have decided to finally opt out of what the mindset was when I was in college, which was, I had to have every other one. I wanted to upgrade every year. Because granted, I think the innovation was we got the slimmer. I loved when it was like after I think the iPhone 6S, they finally stopped talking about how thin the phone was. Because they were just like, okay, we can't get any thinner.
Yeah.
So the selling point had to become something else. But granted, if they hadn't made it thin, And there's plenty of companies out there who I believe if they wouldn't have made it thinner or didn't have that possibility to,
they would have kept chugging along.
They would have just kept chugging along without ever making it thinner.
Yeah.
I do think in certain correct areas, I still obviously am very highly critical of Apple, but there are times where they do things that do impress me enough to say, okay, at least you improved on that and you didn't have to.
Yeah.
And it irritates me when they do get things wrong, because they pride themselves and pat themselves on the back a little bit too much nowadays than they did before. Whereas before it used to be, no, we're just bringing out a new product that you didn't think you needed until we showed it to you.
Before it truly was, it just works. And like you've said, there's so many times now that really,
iCloud is awful.
That aggravates me. Yeah, the iCloud, the syncing with my AirPods.
Awful.
Even just some of the simple things like where you touch your AirPod, and I know you can go in and change some of those controls.
You can't even modify it.
You can't? Okay, I thought you could modify some of the
No.
things. So see, that's the thing, yeah. And it's annoying because there's been times where I've accidentally hung on Brandon just because I was trying to adjust my AirPod because it was falling out of my ear, and I'm like, this is so stupid. Why would they make it so easy to just hang up on somebody? So
I don't know. I haven't had any issues like that, but my issue with Apple is the price. Once you move everything in-house, it should cut your cost. If you're not paying Intel to make your processors anymore, your cost should go down.
I've seen that, though.
And that's the issue I have. I tried to help my friend of mine buy a new MacBook Pro. The cheapest MacBook Pro you can get is $2,400. He could not get a MacBook Pro for the $1,699 that he got his MacBook Pro 5 years ago. So there's for the same size screen.
Now here, and this is where I'll agree with you on that, because to me, the other problem with that is the SKUs that they give you. Like you were talking about earlier tonight, and they did the same thing with the Mac Studio they introduced today. For iPhones, they've been stingy in terms of how you can get different upgrades in storage.
Yeah.
For one, you already know when you're buying a Mac product now, more than likely, everything is soldered on board.
Yeah, you can't
upgrade it after the fact.
Yeah.
So they're trying to entice you to buy the most upgraded feature that you're going to utilize.
The iPads I was looking at had a 64 gig or they only had two pricing tiers: 64 gig for $599 or a 250 something for $745. And I'm like, why can't your lower tier be like 100 gigabytes or something? It's
or
like,
even have like a middle tier in between those two.
128.
Yeah.
And it just annoys me because it's like at this point, storage is so cheap. I can go buy a 64 gigabyte thumb drive for like $15.
Apple has the most expensive storage.
No doubt.
History.
Yeah,
Yes.
and it annoys me because it's like there's
They're
no reason
upcharging you.
your phones and your iPads can't start at like that 120 gigabyte and then go up. It's like they make sure.
Well,
that it has
and when they
storage.
do that, when they actually make that change on whatever the next iPhone is,
Yeah.
they always make it a point to say, and now our base storage is 256. Look at what we did for you.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
We could have done it 10 years ago, but we didn't want
exactly.
you to be.
Yeah.
But then, like with the Mac Studio, and this will be my last point, they have now been transitioning over the last year to their new M1, their first chip in their Mac product lines. They have the M1. Then they brought out the Mac Pros last fall, and they have the M1 Pro and the M1 Max.
Yeah.
Then with the introduction of the Mac Studio today for prosumers at home, they introduced the M1 Ultra. But the only SKUs they allow on the Mac Studio are the M1 Max or the M1 Ultra. So how come I can't get a Mac Studio with an M1 or an M1 Pro? Because it no longer fits into that prosumer market?
Sure.
Again, I don't care, but the fact of the matter is because you don't have that SKU that I can choose from, it doesn't allow me to lower the cost.
Yeah.
Lower than what their base price is.
They don't want you to lower the
They
cost.
don't.
Yeah.
And granted, and that may be for their own personal reasons of, well, this is what performance. And again, I think this goes back to their analytics and their highly direct targeting of what group of people they are trying to aim for. And I think that Apple knows exactly what group they are targeting for with every product line and with every SKU. That's the reason you have an iPhone SE. You have an iPhone, you have an iPhone 13, an iPhone 13 Pro, an iPhone 13 Pro Max, iPhone 13 Mini.
And in the past, I was happy to pay thousands of dollars because I knew, like my MacBook, it's lasted 12 years, and it's like I paid $1,200 for that thing, and here's 12 years. That's $100 a year.
Right.
There's no way I'd get that much value out of a Windows laptop. But now it's kind of where
I do. That's the only place where I feel like Apple still, for me, gives the best bang for their buck. Mm-hmm. In terms of the Mac line, I feel like if I'm purchasing the Mac,
it'll last.
I know, and I would have told your friend Sean, I know you can't shell out the $24.99 now, but if you could save a little longer and you could buy this, there's no doubt in my mind that would last you longer than you would ever expect.
The $1,700 iMac Pro that he had, or MacBook Pro that he has, was, I want to say he got that in 11 or 12.
Yeah.
So it's old. It has served its purpose. It's just that it seems to me like in the past, same thing with the iMac. When I bought my first 24-inch iMac, it was, I think we bought that one maxed out, and I think it was $24.99. Today, you can't get a MacBook or an iMac maxed out for $24.99. But when I bought my 27-inch iMac maxed out, it was the same freaking price. I went from a Core 2 Duo to an i7. I went from 4 gigabytes of RAM to 16, and I went from a 24-inch display to a 27, and I got it all for the same price that I paid 4 years prior or 5 years prior. Now you cannot do that.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's part and parcel when they're changing, they're shifting over to their new processors. And I think you'll see that SKU shift to where as they come out with newer processors or ways in which they do different, like
and as they continue to mass produce their own chips and processors,
and I think you'll see like, okay, when the M2 comes out, then the M1 product line will still be available. It'll be just like the iPhone. Like I can't buy an iPhone 11 now, but I can get an iPhone 12 because the 13 is out, and I can get it for a lot cheaper. And it'll be like what they do now, where every time the new line comes out, they shift the old one down, and eventually they make one.
But I think
that's
Sean's
too
point was
old.
used to you could buy the new product that wouldn't cost you any more than when you bought your new product like several years ago.
Right.
Yeah,
and I think for the most part, I think that's still true. Like I think the iMac that they offer today is still a much better value of what I would get than even what I paid for when I got my iMac back when I bought it 10 years ago. And I think that's just the evolution of technology in general. Again, it all goes back to, I don't think their innovation is necessarily in product lines as much as it is in, steady evolutions of their services and their product lines are not the fancy iPhone that you have in your hand. It's more so what's running inside of it that they're innovating. So I do have hope for Apple in terms of, with them taking on the processor line and, having the M1 push. And of course they've had since the A4 chip in the iPhone 4, they've been on, their own processors there. And we've seen in terms of the longevity of phones, even how those have outlived and outlasted other brands with regard to their yearly updates. I would much rather have my iPhone 11 that I bought brand new 2-3 years ago than, of course, a lot of the Google Pixel or even Samsung.
Yeah.
But all right, I think that's going to do it for this multimedia segment and this show. We went really long-winded.
Really long. We talked a lot about Batman and a lot about Apple, so
it happens. I'm sorry, guys. It does happen. But right there at the bottom of your screen, all of our social media, Red Moon Book, Red Moon Tweet, Red Moon Pics, and search for Red Moon Productions on YouTube. Thank you all so much for joining us. But of course, you can always do that old-fashioned thing, which is called email, and email us at rmpodcast@redmoonproductions.com. Until next time, that's going to do it for this episode of the Red Moon Podcast. Thank you all so much for joining us. I am one of your hosts, Brandon Davidson, alongside our normal new host,
Sean Sebastian.
And
show's over. Show's over now. It's over now.
I thought he said show's over. I was like,
Show's over.
Who's show's over?
Show me the money.
We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. For more reviews, previous podcast shows, and everything Red Moon, visit our website, redmoonproductions.com. You can also like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter by searching for Red Moon Productions, LLC. We'll see you at the movies.